Day 2 Vikings Training Camp in Mankato. I'm Sam Ekstrom. This is Arif, Hasan, and no Luke Inman today.
Oh, well.
He's actually holding down the fort of Buffalo Wild Wings because we have a live show there on Saturday. That'll be Saturday at 1 o'clock, Buffalo Wild Wings, Lakeville. Come on out and check it out. Andy Carlson, Luke Inman, yours truly, a report from Arif, Hasan. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's Saturday at 1 o'clock. Today in Mankato, a lot going on. Hot day out here. Mike Zimmer spoke this morning, and obviously a bunch of players speaking as well. A ton to take away, and I think the best way to do this, Arif, is just to go through all of the drafted rookies to start, and just talk about the 11 guys the Vikings picked and where they stand after 2 days in Rookie Camp 2.0, as we're calling it. So why don't we start with the two most prominent guys, Dalvin Cook, Pat Elflein, the Day 2 picks. What have you seen from them?
Well, I think Dalvin Cook is as advertised. We saw a lot of the highlights coming out of OTAs. He looks like the same player here. And, he showcased some kind of, patience that you wanted to see from him, kind of patience that I think made him such, a highly coveted running back. Obviously, before the pads come on and just in general training camp, it's always difficult to evaluate the running backs. But from what we've seen, I think that he's done a really, really good job. As for Pat Elflein, I think he and actually the next guy, Jaleel Johnson, they've had some pretty interesting battles at camp. I think that they've both had a couple of reps on each other. I think they're both playing really well. And when either of them are playing someone else, they're playing pretty dominantly. And I think this is a better day for Elflein. I only saw one errant snap. That was a pretty big problem yesterday. But yeah, I think for the two of them, they both have played extremely well.
Jaleel Johnson, a guy that Mike Zimmer talked about specifically today. He likes his quickness, likes his explosiveness, and his physicality. A guy that had 7.5 sacks his senior year at Iowa. And while Sharif Floyd is over on the rehab field working with resistance bands, Jaleel Johnson threatening to take his spot in that rotation. Still don't know about Sharif Floyd. He might come back in training camp. He might not. We don't know. I'm not sure Sharif Floyd even knows at this point. Continuing on with the rookies, why don't we talk about the receivers next? Rodney Adams and Stacy Coley. We talked about Coley's injury yesterday, but he seems to be coming along very nicely. He didn't even look too limited today.
Yeah, he looked ready to play. I thought today between the two receivers, he looked the better of the two. There were a couple of drills where we got to see some pretty extreme versions of lateral quickness, the kind of things that they were asking the receivers to do. And I think Coley handled it with aplomb. I think that, Rodney, he struggled just a little bit in terms of keeping his footing, staying upright. And then when we went back to 11s, I think that, we saw that continue. I only saw a couple of reps where Coley wasn't, winning out against a lot of his competition. Rodney Adams, wasn't bad, but I don't think he stood out the same way that Coley did.
And it seems like Coley has been a little bit better in the punt return game. Not to say that they're going to be the punt returner on this team. They might be the kick returner, but that's advantage Coley as well, I would say, at this point.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that, Rodney has had, and you mentioned that he was popping during OTAs too, Rodney's had a little bit of trouble tracking those punts. Coley, it seems pretty natural for him. It'll be interesting when we go to kickoffs, though, because I think Rodney's probably going to have an advantage there.
Talk about the linebackers now. Ben Gideon and Elijah Lee. Different type of player. Gideon more of your first down linebacker, in on running plays. Lee seems more like an outside type guy who could play all 3 downs at some point if he got the most out of him in his career. What have you seen from those two?
I think if you think of Gideon only as that run linebacker, I think that, what we saw today was pretty good. He was doing a really good job flowing to open gaps. I thought that he stayed assignment sound. I thought that, his ability to generate tackles for loss in 11s, tackles for loss in 11s, was pretty impressive. But, in coverage, I thought, he didn't look as good as that undrafted free agent Eric Wilson. He didn't look as good as Elijah Lee in coverage. It seems like he was kind of late to react to the ball in zone. So, that's a bit of a problem. But, given that his role is likely only to be, being available for rundowns, I thought that he performed pretty fantastically. And like I just said, Elijah Lee played, I think pretty well in coverage. That's to be expected. We kind of, had hoped that against, a bunch of rookies, many of them undrafted, that he can kind of shine. I think that what is more surprising is that I think today, at least, he did pretty well in the run game.
Talk about Danny Isidora, the lone offensive lineman in the draft class. Mike Zimmer talked about him and liked him today after the walkthrough. If you're comparing the two 63s out there, Dylan Bradley did not have a great day, but Danny Isidora, the offensive 63, did pretty well today, and he seems to be holding his own, at least against these young defensive linemen.
Yeah, no, I think so. And I think that actually Isidora's day before was actually better. I think today, there were maybe a couple of mistakes. I think overall you're right that he had a pretty good day. And that's kind of unique. I mean, this offensive line, there's only 5 offensive linemen in camp. And so they have to play every single rep. And while the 2, offensive tackles on the end, Collins and Arturo Venus,
sure.
They're struggling a lot. But that interior line, which includes Freddie Tegaloa, who we mentioned yesterday, they're generally holding up pretty well. Not as good a day for Tegaloa as an aside. But I think that Isidora, we didn't see any significant mistakes when we saw the pocket pushed. Was it him or Elflein that was at risk or was at issue? And so I think that generally speaking, Isidora's had a pretty good day. Again, I thought it was better yesterday. He did a pretty good job getting to the second level and sealing off the linebackers. But, today, I think better than I had expected based on what I had seen in the draft.
And if he forces his way onto this roster, it'll come at the expense of maybe a Clemmings, a Beavers, a Searles, a Karen. Somebody a little more established could see their job go away. I think we got 3 more rookies here. Jack Tocho, actually the final man in the draft class, converting from corner to safety. I haven't seen too much from Tocho. I think he's been, and not to say bad, I mean nondescript. I don't think he's been too good or bad. He's been pretty level, I would say.
It's always difficult to evaluate the safeties in camp. Safety is just a position that in linebacker was already difficult to evaluate, but when you get further and further away from the ball, someone like a safety, it's always difficult to see and figure out if they're doing the right thing at the moment. There are so few snaps where the ball is thrown at them that you don't get a ton of evaluation time. But from what I saw today, I thought he did a pretty good job. Just like the linebackers, I thought he did a decent job filling in the run game. Earned some praise from coaches. It's a pretty good proxy for determining how good someone is at camp. Maybe a couple of mistakes, I think, sort of later in practice, but I think for the bulk of it, looked pretty good. In individual drills, I would say that he was maybe okay, but I think in team drills, Lawrence looked pretty good.
Ifade Onabo, dealing with a little bit of a foot issue right now, maybe not 100%. I didn't think he looked all that good in OTAs. How do you think he's looked so far in camp?
In camp, I think he's looked great, actually. I think some of it has to do with the tackles he's going up against. They're losing against everybody. And maybe this is to be expected, but he's doing better than any of the other pass rushers out there. And I don't know, is it that impressive to beat Tayshaun Bauer? Is it that impressive to beat Sam McCaskill? Probably not, but it is, at least he's fulfilling that expectation. And, if this is, to put it in context, if he plays like this against every tackle in the regular season, then he's Pro Bowl player. But these tackles are not those kinds of tackles. So it's difficult to evaluate, his overall performance in context, but at least what we see of him is good.
Last one, big number 84, Bucky Hodges, tight end.
I think we were both surprised by him today because I think that we saw some pretty good blocking from him. Multiple snaps where I thought that he was doing a pretty good job. Both as the end man on zone runs, which I think sometimes that can get pretty easy depending on where the defensive end is. He was able to close down on double teams. But I think that, some of his more difficult blocking assignments, getting up to the second level, making sure that he seals off the linebacker, I think that he was doing a surprisingly good job. I didn't think that he'd be that capable at it, this soon. Sounds like, it's pretty positive. I don't think that, neither you or I are the kind of people to just, puff up Vikings players. I think that this has genuinely been a pretty good day for the drafting guys.
Yeah, for sure. And Mike Zimmer talked a couple days ago about how he wanted to get more out of the rookies this year, and that's part of the reason why they held this rookie portion of training camp to get them a little bit more experience before the veterans come in tomorrow. Actually, at 10 a.m., they report to their dorms and practice on Thursday. So to wrap up here really quick, let's talk about maybe some non-drafted guys that you thought popped today. I thought R.J. Shelton was good for a second consecutive day.
Yeah, it's another good day for R.J. Shelton. Did a pretty good job in the slot against, Anton Ekstrom also did a pretty good job as a slot nickel, just to throw his name out there real quick, worth mentioning. But I think that generally speaking, R.J. Shelton lining up against, Horace Richardson, Terrell Singfield, Trey Roberson, I think that he did a pretty good job against all of those guys. I think that, in the individual drills where, they're learning how to plant the foot, they're learning how to, perform with quickness, I think that out of everybody, and that includes Stacey Clay Rodney Adams, he showed the most natural quickness, did the best job in the type of specific footwork drills that they were doing, and was probably the only one that was consistently running routes at the right depth, which is, as we learned from last year, a pretty big part of being a receiver.
And if you subscribe to the theory that a receiver has to be big-bodied with a big catch radius to be good, then R.J. Shelton is not your guy. But if you're of the theory that you just need to be sure-handed, precise in your route running, R.J. Shelton, it might be a very nice option this year. And Who knows if he makes the 53-man roster? You probably need an injury or two for that to happen, but a practice squad option. And we've seen the Vikings pull guys up from the practice squad before. You never know what might happen to the unassuming R.J. Shelton. Anyone else that caught your eye?
Yeah, I think Terrell Sinkfield is not an undrafted rookie, but, it's kind of sort of in the same mold of guys that are pretty long shot to make the roster. I think Sinkfield looked surprisingly good today. I think that he didn't look that good yesterday, but I think that not just in individual drills where he's earning a lot of praise from coaches, but in 11s, his recovery, like one time I know that he read the wrong route, recovered in time to get a pass deflection, really impressive. One of the things that I'd always noted about Sinkfield was that as a receiver, he didn't show the quickness that was there in his testing. I think he ran a sub-7 3-cone, really fast short shuttle, and his athletic profile suggested he was a quick athlete. Didn't look like that as a receiver. As a cornerback, it looks like it's all there. He's playing with fluidity, and he's playing, I think, with more intention than you'd expect from somebody who's position converts. I'd say Sinkfield had a surprisingly good day, did a good job against all manners of receivers, not just, Moritz Boringer, but did a good job shutting down Fricke, did a good job against Rodney Adams, did a good job against even, we were just talking about R.J. Shelton, so I think that's notable.
I'm Sam Ekstrom. This is Arif Hasan. Day 2 of Vikings training camp in the books. Veterans report tomorrow. It'll be an early practice as the rookies go at 9 a.m. on Wednesday. Final reminder, you can buy Arif Hasan's training camp guide, zonecoverage.com. Learn how to watch training camp. It really is valuable stuff. I give you my full endorsement. It's good. It's fantastic. Just $20, 50,000 words. It's awesome. Again, I'm Sam. This is Arif. Day 2 is a wrap.